Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thanks for taking your time to join with us this beautiful day, the 27th day of July 2024. And the program, once again, folks, is Africa. And for today's Africa, we come here every time on Saturdays to talk about what is going on in Africa, to have a discussion. And today, our special guest is going to be Akol Dok, a young analyst writer, a broadcaster, entrepreneur. He's in South Sudan, and we are trying everything that we can do to have the connection. But in the meantime, I would like to introduce a guest co-host for this program for today, Femi Akinsola. Yes, she is a young journalist based in Canada, and we are going to look at what is in the offing when it comes to Africa, the Caribbean, and the diaspora. But today we are going to rethink the African Revolution. If I say the African Revolution, folks, it's all about what is going on in Africa since mid last year, if I can put it mildly, with respect to the Sahel region, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Chad. The list goes on and on and on. And should I think that Africa is now awakening? Because you know what? As I always say on this program, Africa doesn't need the world. The world rather needs Africa. If Africa should build a wall around the continent, the whole world will come to a crashing spot. That's why I always say Africa doesn't need the world rather needs Africa. Kemi, how are you doing?
I am very well, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from anywhere you are in the world. It's actually morning here in the eastern part of North America. So yeah, good morning.
Great, great. It's nice to have you on this program because you
Thank you
see,
for
we've
having
been
me.
doing this program for quite a while and we've been exploring, we've been looking at the best in Africa, not always the worst in Africa.
Mhm.
If it comes to the point where we have to mix it up, yes, we will mix it up. There's nothing wrong with Africa. We have leaders who have misled us, continue to mislead us, and
Mhm.
continue not to think about what is best for the people that they are sort of wielding their powers on. Kimmy, let's look at the role of African youth in this march towards sovereignty in our different countries. Let's take Nigeria, for instance. We heard recently that there's a new national anthem, and a lot of people are going gung ho against it because, one, it wasn't written by a Nigerian, if I'm right, and two, it doesn't reflect what Nigeria is all about. It's about, it's a combination of praising the colonial masters and all those kind of stuff. When I read it, I haven't heard the music, but maybe you have um, something that you can share with us before we go into um, the topic. The floor is yours, please. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much for bringing me into the topic. And this is actually a very interesting topic, even in Nigeria and amongst Nigerians and Africans in diaspora, really. And trust Africans to always make a joke from everything, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so I mean, amidst the whole economic situation and situation of hunger that has plagued uh, majority of the Nigerian people, and the security incidents that's been happening and everything. A lot of people, including myself, are surprised that what the government can actually focus on at the time is changing the national anthem. you know I'm wondering, why are we even changing the national anthem? The excuse isn't even excusable. There isn't, if I may say, there isn't yet a valid reason for the national anthem being changed. And this is following, the change in Naira notes, before the end of the then government, before, this current government took over. So it's like, yes, where, the people, the citizens are requesting for a change, but the change they are getting is not the change that they want, or is not the change that, they are asking for. So, yes, amidst so many controversies over the change of the national anthem, some people are for it, some people are against it. The pertinent thing, really very important thing, is how a lot of people have been able to make jokes out of it. Make memes, and make comics, and 3D cartoons and everything out of it. And I feel like this is one thing that you cannot take away from like an average Africans, no matter the condition, like, we find ways to be happy within ourselves, right? And you would agree with me.
Yeah,
Do you agree with me?
I do.
Yes. So regardless of what is going on, there'll be, a chance to throw one or two jokes here and there about, things. And you should see different versions of the national anthem. I don't mind sending you video links of how it is being, the original way it's supposed to be sung, and how people are really struggling to sing it, because it's like this isn't even our problem. We just want like daily bread. We want to have 3 to 4 meals on the table every day, without having to break a sweat, or having to struggle or go hungry, or deprive another person of bread. So yeah.
Yeah,
It's very
you
interesting.
touched on something that is very interesting. We're
Hmm.
talking about the economic situation, because if Nigeria progresses, the whole of Africa progresses. If
Definitely.
Nigeria falls, the whole of Africa falls.
Mm-hmm.
And to those of us who are sitting it from the outside looking in, there's been some economic struggles within Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, we had a gentleman, an agriculturist, on this program a couple of sometime last year. He is a Ghanaian, and he was instrumental, and he was hired by the Nigerian government to help in the growth of rice. So it got to a point where Nigeria, there was a lot of rice production and all those kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
With all
Mm-hmm.
these, with all the economic downturns that affected us during the COVID era,
Mm-hmm.
and I know a lot of countries are struggling to come out of it. Some are making strides. It's not been easy. Why the national anthem? Was it, or is it as important as taking control and changing the situation? Because at the end of the day too, we can also talk about electricity and all those kind of things that affect an economy growing. Why now? Why do you think it's now that they're coming up with this national anthem? It's very, very I'm very curious if you can
Yes.
enlighten us on that.
Well, to be honest, it started from, the national anthem was actually signed 1 year into the, administration of the new president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and, to replace the old anthem. So before it was signed into bill, it means that, you know, um, it, some people sat down to think about it, to actually raise a bill, right? It was a national anthem bill which was passed into law, and I don't want to use the word shoved down the
Really?
throat of citizens. Yes, it was a bill that was passed into law. So that means that, because of course for a bill to be passed into law, that means that there's been several sittings, before it was accepted. Except it was just a bill that just went straight to the president and then he passed it into law just like that. Except that before a bill is passed into law, they've checked the pros and cons and how it will affect the people, and then the policies around it. I believe. However, a lot of people, especially the Nigerians in diaspora and the international media bodies, think that it's just a way to distract citizens from the obvious situation, economic situation. Now, I am not saying that that is what I think. I am saying that there's been reports on the CNN, on other international bodies that think that it is a form of distraction, just to distract people from what is going on. And before then also there was there's this Samuel Oyewole is like a political scientist. There was a time he also had his take on it about how there's a distract and rule tactic that the now government is using in their governance. And they're just using democracy and democratic setup where people are involved in governance is not really respected. So again, for me personally, I have no idea why that is the focus. Just like I had no idea why changing the currency by the then government before this new government was also an important step, or what they would do. But hopefully we can, since the government has changed the anthem now, then hopefully they can focus on what really matters. You see, what really matters. It's okay to digress. They probably needed to digress because they needed time to be able to plan things strategically. They needed time to be able to gather resources and do one or two things or important things. But now that they've changed it, please, can you get on to the next important things, please?
Yeah, I get you. That is African politics, if I can say. Diverting. I get what you're saying. Diverting people's attention towards what doesn't change it, because at the end of the day, the market woman or the ordinary Nigerian will have to go to the market.
Yeah, she's not going to be singing the national anthem for you to come
National
buy a
anthem.
stock.
So this is what I would say. They have a misplaced kind of value. Misplaced kind
It's
of value.
priority.
That's right. So it is very interesting, because I hope African leaders will just sit back, because we've been saying this unapologetically about the fact that we have leadership in crisis. But then at the end of the day, we all would understand that if we talk in terms of misplaced values, yes, you can say that, because I could not fathom why the national anthem should take a precedence over this. Because casting my mind back, you may be able to help me with this. A couple of years ago, the youth of Nigeria were on the streets for precisely for, if I can put it mildly, because people are suffering, and the riots and all those kind of stuff should have given, whether the present government or the last government or whoever, the ruling elites, to know that what, at some point in time the world is changing, completely changing, because we have a bipolar world right now. So what is good for you is what you should go for, because we have not learned our lessons over the years to be self-sufficient, to rely on ourselves. We have so many African institutions and international institutions. Left me alone, Africans and Africa should leave some of these world bodies, because they don't do us any good. The IMF, for instance, they don't do us any good. Tell me one country that the IMF has gone and restructured and they've been successful. There's not a single one of them. So I think um, African leaders should rather put the important things on the table, whether it's bitter or sweet. The average Nigerian, the average African working in the streets of Accra, in Jamena, Tripoli, Cairo, what have you, need jobs.
Hmm.
They need
Yeah,
jobs.
I agree with you. And I was having a conversation with a group of young leaders the other day, and we were talking about, how, govern presidents and, head of states from the different African countries are like almost the same, you see. And it's like, they're all cut from like the same piece of clothing, right? Because like at the end of the day, there are pertinent issues. Now, again, I am pro Africa, right? I am pro Africa. I can say that I
Of
am pro
course,
Africa
of course.
because again, no
Right.
matter what is going on, I like to focus on like the positives because like regardless of whatever negative is going on, there are also like positive things going on. Like from Africa, we have like the richest man in Africa who is also topping the charts, amongst the richest men in the world,
Yeah.
you see. So again, amidst, all of these things that is going on, there are still good fruits. Anyways, I was in my conversation with this group of people. We were talking about how these leaders, is it that, they have a meeting to think the same way and do the same things or what? Because it's like it's the complaints, the issues, it's like almost identical, in majority of the African states. It's almost identical. Talk about corruption, talk about insecurity, talk about economic downturn, which is not only in Africa, I mean, Canada is going through its own, economic instability also. But I mean, you see the government doing something, you see the government being active, in ensuring a balance, right? Uh, However, it's like so I was personally wondering, is it that the people surrounded by like the leaders, is it just the people, is it that there are no people who are actually like amongst the masses who understand what the masses want or what the masses need? Who are the special advisors of these people? What are they doing? What are you specially advising? Because if the advice you're giving the government, and by government I mean the persons who are representatives of the government who are in the position of leadership, is not they're bringing up policies or things that does not positively or eh, really especially affect the masses in a positive way, then what exactly are you doing there? Because again, if you're saying that you are there, you're promoting democracy. What is democracy? Democracy is a government for the people, by the people, So like, are you there for yourselves? Are you there for like your group of people, or are you there actually for the masses? If you're there for the masses, then why aren't you listening to the masses? Why aren't you doing what the masses want?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
know if you can answer that question for me. I would appreciate that.
when they get into power, right? There's a difference between the Western politics and what we practice in Africa. Well, that has democracy, like you said, has it served us well?
Hmm.
Where did it come from? So we had a discussion here a couple of months ago about the need for Africa and Africans to, sort out our differences and come to the realization and then try to find out whether the so-called democracy works for us. We have to find a better way because 4 years, every 4 years, you go and vote, and after that, what? We spend massive amounts of money, some that comes in, others that goes out there to do so many things. But at the end of the day, we don't see anything. So it is up to Africans to look for what is in their best interest, because in the height of an economic downturn, I don't think, a national anthem is worth the while of Nigerians. No, not at all. Not at all. Folks, you are listening to Love the Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean online radio. Those of you joining us on StreamYard, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, you know what you have to do. Like, share the program. And to those of you listening to us on Love the Online Radio, yes, we are having a discussion about rethinking the African Revolution. We are waiting to get booked into South Sudan, where our special guest called Dol will be joining us. I think we are having experiencing some technical difficulties, but we will try as much as possible to get him on board. Now, Kemi, let me ask you this. Let's discuss this. What do you think should be the role of the youth in Africa in this march towards total sovereignty, if there's something like that, or towards the march for an African so-called revolution that we are experiencing now?
In my opinion, I think the youth should start taking leadership positions, which, I can say that in Nigeria, youth are already doing that. Because if you go into the parliament, you would see that, we have a couple of young people who are actually getting personally and, actively involved in politics. However, the question is, because it is a political thing, right? And not just in Nigeria alone, other African countries, you see that the people who are majorly in governance are like the older people, right? So, I mean, maybe if there can be a policy to say that, look, even though you want to do two terms, or there should be like an age gap or an age group, for a certain age of persons who are contesting for certain positions in the government, in governance, not to pass a certain age, you see. And then we should start giving the chance to the actual leaders. I remember when I was younger, and then in school they'll be like, children, listen to your parents. Why? Because we are the leaders of tomorrow. I mean, how many tomorrows do we want to have? We have lived the tomorrow. We are in the third generation tomorrow. So when are we going to have the chance to lead? You would see a lot of youth, right? A lot of millennials are doing well in like their own space, which I am sure that if these people are given the opportunity in governance, they would do well. You see, they would do well. But again, these policies have to be set. These things, a bill has to probably be written and passed into law, which, we're hoping that not just in Nigeria alone, but in all African countries, every millennial should be given a chance to lead. And let's see how, the millennials can do things differently, you see. Let's see how the millennials can do things differently. The millennials are like, in between the older generation and then the newer generation. The millennials are people that I think, in my opinion, that, they have an understanding of like the two generations that they are in between, right? So again, give the millennials a chance in high governance, you see. And I'm not only saying that for Africa alone, I'm saying that for the rest of the world too. The US, Canada also, I believe, is doing a great job in doing that. They have an open governance role. And but we still need to see more millennials doing something,
Yeah.
and let's see how, they're able to change things around for the betterment of the citizens in each country.
Yeah. And sometimes some people say back in Africa, let me look at that.
Ewa?
Even if they are given the chance, they get swept by the system. Because
It
the
is.
system,
It is.
the system has been set up in
It's
such a way
yeah.
that they get swept out. You see them
Mm,
massively saying that things are not
mm,
going good and all those kind of. You just need $1, put it somewhere there, you take it and they change their minds about what they are doing, but they forget about the fact that at the end of the day, they are going to be the leaders. They are going to be holding the whole box of eggs, and if they drop it, they've dropped everything. Do they think about that? You see, I'm saying this to say that if there should be a role for millennials in there, there should be some serious roles, as we experience in Kenya, because it was not thinkable. It was unthinkable for the youth to get up and say, no, enough is enough. You've taxed us enough. If you go to some of these, let me cite Ghana, for instance, what I read, that they have ex gratia after the tenure, if they don't win back elections, and when they are going, they are giving some massive amounts of monies. So people go in there for the money, as opposed to in the West, you get the
Yeah, for
money
the
before they
national
go in
cake.
there. That's right,
They want to have their own share of the national cake,
national cake,
which is really sad, really.
which is
You know,
very sad. But in
which is
Kenya,
really sad.
I'm so proud of the Kenyan youth to have pushed the government to say, okay, you know what? Okay, we give up. Okay, we are going to listen to you. For the first time in African history, we are going to listen to you. We are going to withdraw the bill. I saw a video where members of parliament were running away for their lives because people were thinking that the youth were thinking that they never cared. And is this what we are
Do they
looking?
actually?
Go
Do
ahead,
they?
please. Mhm.
Do they actually care?
Well, I would like to say this is a warning shot for the rest of Africa, because if Kenyan youth have been able to do this, to get a government to change a bill, and even to go to the extent of, sacking, removing all cabinet ministers, to appoint
New ones,
new
exactly.
ones. That is. I mean, I tip my hat to Kenyans,
But my
and
question
also.
is, the new ministers they are appointing, is it a case of recycling the, recycling the same people over and over again, or these are actually people who can lead, who can take the lead in issues about the government, in issues that concerns the masses, in issues that concerns the youth? Are they still recycling their circle of old people? And aside from old people, I'm talking, are they still recycling their see, there's a difference between you sack somebody and then you went to employ the person's friend. Indirectly, you have still employed that person, because whether you like it or not, the friend will go to the same person to ask for advice. Oh, you were here before, as a mentor or godfather. And godfatherism is a thing, in
Mhm,
politics
mhm.
in major parts of Africa,
Yeah,
I can say.
even
So it's
here.
like indirectly still employing that same person, you see.
But I think I hear you. But I think with what happened, that people have running away for their lives and changing their suits into whatever, and then I think it's a warning that the next time you are given that position, you better watch out, because a can has been opened where the people are going to be critically looking at whatever the new set of politicians are doing. Already, people are protesting against a particular or a couple of people who have been reappointed into the cabinet positions.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly what I'm saying.
That's right. So if they don't learn from what happened, because a lot of people lost their lives, over 40 people lost their lives, and God bless their souls for sacrificing their lives for
Amen.
the betterment of Kenya. But I'm looking at it from the point of view as to your take on it. Do you think this is going to be the role of the youth in Africa, apart from what is happening in Kenya or what happened in Kenya? Because it's not over. It is not over still, because they want the government out. They want the president out, because they are saying that what they promised pre-election is not what they delivered. So there were some of them who voted for the present government, They are saying we don't want to have anything to do with you because if you can tax even levy a tax on even bread, looking at the fact that a lot of unemployment in among the youth is what is occurring, then they have the right as Kenyans to take the laws into their hands and then protest against what is actually happening because they feel at the end of the day there are two levels: the elite and the any other the ordinary people. This is just to say that, you see, in African politics or in politics in general, let me talk about Africa, for instance. People in the rural areas don't need skyscrapers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need massive, infrastructure. All that they care about is something for their children, schools for their children, good drinking water, food. Give them the tools. They farm. They've been farming for centuries. Give them the tools. They don't need it. But it seems because of what is happening, everybody goes in for the kill, for the money. So we are depopulating the rural areas, those who have been feeding us, and now everybody is going into the urban areas. And once they get into the urban area, then it means you have
Become overpopulated.
to right, and then you have to make things right. But in the case of Kenya, things didn't go right, and the millennials were saying that enough is enough is enough is enough. My question or my discussion with you is, do you think this is going to be the way of the future in terms of other African countries? Because they've seen what happened in Kenya. They've seen that they were able to demonstrate and protest to make a change in their country for their own futures. What do you think? What's your take on it?
So, I mean, every citizen has a right to protest, even though I would say, let the protest be peaceful, right?
Mhm.
You can't treat a wound by stabbing the same wound, right? Uh, yeah, because if pre-election the candidate actually promised this, and that, then we should be able to hold you accountable rather, to say that it's been 2 years after you got into office, it's been 3 years since you after you got into office, and we haven't seen anything. Things has gone worse instead. So yes, the citizens have the right, be it millennials or not, be it the previous generation or even the younger generation. Everyone has a right, man, woman, old, young, has a right to be able to call out the government, to be able to call out those people, to say that this is not what you promised. Things are getting worse. We want what you promised us because this is why we voted you in. You gave us your word. You said this is the things that you're going to do. You said these are the things you're going to do. So we are waiting to see those things. And I think that the way forward for not just African leaders, but for every other country who is experiencing things like this, is to call out the government. Be it peaceful protest, be it a sitting, probably a board sitting where leaders in several sectors can sit down to say, look, these are the problems that we're facing and these are the solutions that we want. Let's talk about how we can make this happen for ourselves, for the industry, and then for the people, you see. So personally, I think that would be the way forward. If you're coming under the if you're pro democracy, then you should, before office, then when you get into office, you shouldn't be anti democracy. You should be pro democracy and act out democracy and let the people actually enjoy the benefits of democracy or whatever form of government that you have promised the people before you got into office. So again, to be able to hold the government accountable regardless of the people in governance accountable regardless of what is going on.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Because in the case of Africa, for instance, you know what? There's a lot to be done, and I think I agree. I'm not advocating violence, you can protest and protest. But you see, the systems have been set up. Even look at the United States, in Canada, here, in Europe, when the students or the young people started, protesting with respect to the Palestinian cause or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, the powers that be had to suppress it. So it's not going to be easy to do that. But in the case of Africa, what I'm trying to dwell on is that young Africans have been able to make a change. In terms of Kenya, they've died, over 40 of them or more of them, they've died. And they've been able to make sure, to ensure that the government changed its ways or her ways. But the fact of the matter is that, are the politicians listening from other countries? I think they have to listen, because you know what? When they are no longer in parliament, or when they are no longer in positions of governance, they become like any one of us. But at the end of the day, their pockets are full. Their pockets become full, so they become immune. How many of these people did you see them participating in these protests? You don't see them. So what I'm trying to drive out is that Africa is on the verge of revolutionizing and then changing what hitherto has been sold to us, damaged goods, as democracy. I'm not against it. But what is democracy? We have to find a way, okay? We have to find a way that suits us as Africans. What type of governance do we need? To the so-called democracy. We had our traditional institutions that work well. If you take the Empire of Oyo, for instance, then the Benin Empire, the Ghana Empire, if you take the Ashanti Empire and all these guys, they were governed, they had the ways of governing themselves. In the Oyo Empire, for those of you who don't know, if you were appointed in a position of power and you abuse it, you were given a cup of poison to kill
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Do we have to go through all these things? I don't think we do. We are in a modern era where leaders who have been appointed, people who line up for hours on end in this hot African sun to go and vote. And after the voting, they become irrelevant. They are not accountable to anybody. And even if they are doing the worst job that they can do, come elections time, despite the fact that there are constitutional restraints against bribing people, they bribe people. They take the advantage of the fact that people are poor. So they give them money, they promise them so many things to go and vote for them without them sitting back to see what they have done for them over the past 4 years or 3 years or what have you, that they went into power. So I think from where I sit, I think what has happened in Kenya bids well for Africa, because we are beginning to be enlightened in our own ways to say that, you know what is good for the geese must be good for the gander, notwithstanding the fact that we have leadership crisis in Africa. We've been talking about this on this program for so many, ever since we started this program. We have leadership crisis. Not until the youth of Africa or Africans themselves get up one day and say that, you know what you are doing for us and to us is not good. So you have to change your ways, like what is happening in Kenya. I don't think they will understand the cause. What beats
That's the
me,
question, though.
go ahead, please.
So,
Mm.
in your opinion, do you think that, protesting, what is the essence of the results that you think this protests would actually have in, revolutionizing Africa? Second question would be, do you like, are there any other ways to revolution, reclaim Africa, we put Africa back on the pedestal which I'll use the word, our forefathers, but then they are like leaders, the Kwame Nkrumah, the Awolowo's, where they placed Africa. what are the other ways that you think that Africa can go back to its days of glory?
Like I said before, from where I sit, the second question, I'll answer the second thing first. We have, God has given us anything and everything. Sometimes I sit back to think that God loves Africa, or God loves Africa much more than any other continent. He's showered us with the sunshine, great agricultural lands, mineral resources, human resources, smartness, everything that every continent or every the human race needs to advance has been given to us. And not if we don't use it, of course, people will be talking about colonialism and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I hear that. Ghana has been independent for over how many years now? Over 57 years. I know that it's not easy to sort of walk back and then try to decolonize it, because everything is in the mind. In our educational system that the colonial masters set up, it is the same thing. Do we learn about our history? I don't think so. In Ghana, for instance, I'll say in Ghana, there's no literature. There's nothing about Kwame Nkrumah in the universities and stuff like that.
Which is
in
really
Nigeria,
sad.
I don't think in Awolowo and Azikiwe and all these great leaders, are we teaching them? Are we teaching the children as to what or where these people took us from, to where we were better off under those regimes? But what I'm trying to say is that we have to be able to harness our resources for the betterment of the people. Are we doing that? I don't think so. We have bought into so many different facets of Western life. If an African industrialist produces something, the same thing that is coming from the West, they will not buy that or that of the African. They'll rather take that of the. So we have given up hope. We don't have to. We have Africa doesn't have to go out begging with cup in hands. No, that's what I'm saying. Africa doesn't need the world. The world rather needs Africa. We've got everything. We have to be self-sufficient. We don't have to be importing food. In 2019, Africa imported grains to the tune of $9 billion from Eastern Europe. Whereas if you drop a corn seed, the following morning, just go there, it's coming up. So not until we self-identify as Africans, as being rich, as being powerful, as being anything that the world wants us to believe that we are not nobody and non-entities as Black people, we have to believe in ourselves that we've been endowed with so many resources that we have to be able to take advantage of. But the leadership is what is dragging us back. And in terms of your first question was about democracy, or finding institutions to govern us better. I said before that we had traditional institutions. We can merge the two, because I don't believe in the modern democracy that has been bestowed upon us. You go there for 4 years, you go there and you just go and vote, and nobody's accountable, and all that. Over here in North America, if you don't do what is right, you are out. They are accountable to the people that they serve, to the people who voted them in. When it comes to our institutions, it's neither here nor there. We are part of a global system that is sucking us dry. Are we benefiting from most of these organizations? No. We have an organization, the African Union. I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to go there. That is non-existent.
So,
It's,
do you think that the protests, especially for example, in Kenya, do you think the protests would actually be able to get the citizens or the millennials the results that they want?
oh yes, I think it has paid off big time for them to have come out. Some of them sacrificing their lives for the government to change what they put on the table. That even started the whole thing. It's great. It's great news. It tells us, and it tells other African countries, the youth in other countries, that you know what, you can protest peacefully. They started protesting peacefully until the government unleashed the police on them, right?
Which was
Until the
what
government,
happened with the NSAS, in Nigeria, exit
Nigeria,
protests in Nigeria.
because they knew that what they were doing was wrong. And also take my hat to also to the President Ruto for listening, because initially they were not listening until they found out that, oh my God, this is quite serious. It's more serious than we thought. He says, okay, you know what? Let's sit back and think about what has happened. I'm going to do this. Initially, he was very adamant, but when he saw that the going was going too tough for him, he said, okay, you know what? Let's stop. By the time he did it, how many people had died? Oh, 39 people had died. And their blood is not going to go down in drain,
Hmm.
because other African leaders may be listening too. They have seen what is happening. They have seen what happened in Nigeria and what happened in Kenya. So the youth are now waking up, or the people of Africa are now waking up to the center that this thing cannot continue like this anymore.
Definitely.
We cannot allow this to continue anymore. Why are we sitting down complaining about being thirsty? Whereas we are right there by the riverside. You're
Yeah. You're on top of the water.
you're on top of the water, and then you're saying that you're thirsty.
You're thirsty. Give
So
us the
this is
cup.
this is where I am looking at. So Africa is on the verge of revolutionizing, I mean, decolonizing our minds. That is one thing. We have to. We have no choice. We have no choice. And when it comes to, let me take us to ECOWAS, for instance. Is it benefiting us? No. ECOWAS is a front for Western organizations. Because when Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali said they didn't see, I mean, when um, Burkina Faso or Niger, when they wanted to throw out the French, what did we see? All of a sudden, ECOWAS, let's go and invade these countries. For what? You cannot go and invade if they don't feel that, because they don't feel that they belong. Because they think that ECOWAS has been set up to perpetrate Western programs. So that's why they left. And I don't think they are coming back. And if it's their wish to either come back or not come back. And by so doing, Kenny, by so doing, the three countries, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, their economies, when put together, is larger than that of the European Union. And this is what they are doing. They are reclaiming their sovereignty that has eluded them.
Mhm.
France was buying uranium, I think $88 or $8 or something like that. I don't. Pardon me for that. On the market, the world market, so it's over $200, and they've been doing this for the longest while. They've been doing that for the longest while. So now that the Africans have reclaimed their own sovereignty, these three countries, the Sahel Confederation, is biting well for them. The world cannot continue to go out just like that. I mean, Africa cannot continue to go out being exploited left, right, and center like that. There has to be an end to what has gone on. So the millennials, the youth, are rethinking that, you know what, at the end of the day, this continent belongs to us. We don't have to be, going across the Sahara to die. We can make our own green pastures back home. And this is what is happening. So, you know what, gradually, we are finding our feet as Africans via what has happened in Kenya. It wasn't about the fact that they just got up in the morning and said, let's go and destroy institutions, building infrastructure. No, they were feeling the pinch.
Mm.
So that is why they did what they did, sacrificed countless lives, maimed, injured. And they were able to force the government to change the policies because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
they are the people who are being governed. Your
Mhm.
take on it, please.
Yeah. I agree with you, actually. I agree with
Yes.
you. But then, talking about reclaiming Africa, what do you think the role of the media is in reclaiming Africa?
The media has a very big role to play in Africa towards this revolution. A huge role. They should be accessible. You know, journalists should be able to go anywhere and everywhere to report and not being co-opted into the system. Okay. I know
Yeah.
that for a fact. If you go into so many of these of our countries, that the pro-government ones, I'm not, even here they are the pro-government media and then pro. You should be pro your country. If something is going on wrong, be able to, report on it. Because there are so many facets of journalism, agriculture, correspondence, and all these kind of stuff. We should be able to use this institution or this powerful institution to educate the people as to what is ahead of us, what we should be doing in terms of not only in politics, in our social economic development, in everything. We should be able to use it as a facet for us to be able to progress, to keep the revolution, this baby step that we've done going, as opposed to just being pro, collect some little money down here, left, right, and center, and not being a part of the whole thing. Because at the end of the day, if you collect the little thing and then you don't report on the stuff, your wife or you yourself go to the marketplace. Just like I said, the average African, especially those who feed us from the rural areas, they don't need anything big. They don't need any skyscrapers. They need good roads to transport the food. They need uh, good water to drink. They need good education and then schools for their children. Because it's so disgraceful to see in some African countries, you see children studying under trees, under trees, and some politicians or some of the people in the governance structure having their kids studying abroad. So this is where I am coming to that Africa or Africans should now rededicate themselves or ourselves toward the development of Africa, strictly speaking, by insisting upon changes, because our institutions are very, very weak. Our institutions are weak. Politicians go do stuff, they go scot-free. I'm not talking only about politicians. Politicians are not only the problem. People in the governance structure. You go to the ministries in most African countries and stuff like that. People talk about the ministry. The ministers don't sign checks. The heads of departments and all those people are accountable. But sometimes and most times we don't see that. So all that I'm saying is that we have to make our institutions very effective. The judiciary playing their role, the executive branch playing their role. The fifth column, that is the media, should play their role. And if the media is effective, this revolution that we are speaking about will be successful. Because if you're able to expose what is wrong within the system
Mm-hmm.
for it to be corrected,
Mm-hmm. And
We
not
will.
hide things.
And not hide things just because you've got some little wahala, something there. Then that will be great, great indeed. If you look at the media, the role of the media in the Western world, I'm not talking about the CNN and the MSNBCs and all those kind of stuff. In Canada here, let me talk about Canada, CP24 and CTV and all those. They report things that they see. They report things that they see. Because the fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, they are part of the system. And promises were made. If it's broken, if you are the member of parliament or the member of a provincial parliament and you promise and you don't deliver, the next election you are out. So this is where we're saying that everybody has got a role to play towards this revolution. In South Africa, I'm proud of the South Africans. They are playing their role with respect to what is happening in the Middle East. They were able to go to ICJ. Hitherto, Africans were quiet. They've been quiet. We've been quiet where other jurisdictions have been able to pluck our leaders to try them,
Hmm.
to try them in the International Court of Justice, but others have gone scot-free. So we have to sit back and look at us as Africans and look at what is best for us. We live in a world that is gradually being broken into different kinds of spheres, BRICS and the others. So the revolution is now on. It's not a violent revolution. We are not advocating for any violent revolution. We are advocating for our system to be changed. Nobody
Hmm.
can change that for us.
Yeah,
We should be
for
able to
the
change.
African people. I
Yes,
agree.
yes. So what would be your final thought?
So, finally, I would like to say that just as you have said, nobody can do what we want for us. Nobody can reclaim back our Africa except for the African people. So, whether you're an African in diaspora, you're an African in Africa, we all have a role to play in reclaiming back our Africa.
Thank you, Kemi. Folks, we tried our possible best to get a call up, but technology sometimes doesn't help us. All the same, it's all we have. And it's been a very great pleasure to get Kemi on board. Kemi is now with us in Lovely Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. You'll be seeing more of her on so many different programs. And until we meet again next week, thank you for getting us into your space. And thank you for taking your time to listen to us.
Mhm.
If you are watching us, do the right thing. Like, share, and join us again 24/7. We are here. Listen to us on Lovely Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean online radio. Thank you for your time. Once again, take care of yourselves and each other. Until next week, when we meet again, bye bye.